Hello and welcome to Charter Local Edition Northwest. I'm Dana Cowley and today we're in Roseburg, Oregon. My guest today is Oregon Senator Jeff Kruse. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Dana.
What are your goals this year for education for the state of Oregon?
I think it's time we take a hard look at the direction education is going. The numbers we've been seeing have not been good. We've been trying to transform that system, and a few years ago, in fact, we eliminated the elected superintendent of public instruction, and we did it legislatively, but according to the Oregon Constitution, the superintendent of public instruction will either be elected or will be the governor. So the governor became the superintendent. Subsequent to that was created a board. It's called the Oregon Education Investment Board, that in theory has sway over all of the other components in the education system, and we have created a couple other little pieces in that system, and so far basically all we've done is I think somewhat overly complicate something, and we continue to seem to be driven towards things like Common Core, which is a federal standard that nobody actually can make a whole lot of sense out of. So what we're looking at doing potentially is we will accept the fact that having a true K-20 Board of Education is probably a good idea, because the system needs to be connected. We've got a lot of kids that are in the K-12 system now that are actually taking classes that give them college credits, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. All these things need to happen, so the interconnectivity needs to continue. But it's how we develop the administrative structure to allow this to happen. So we've got legislation we're proposing that would create a true K-20 Board of Education, which would be actually be made up of professionals representing the K-12 system, community colleges, and higher ed. And nothing against the people who are currently serving on the current board, but we think that it would make a lot of sense to have people that truly understand the system and can advocate for the various components of the system in charge of the education in the state of Oregon. Now, the thing that will actually make that work will be the potential to send out a constitutional amendment to the people. And I don't like messing with the Constitution a lot, but in this case, because the Constitution is explicit upon who the superintendent will be, we will need to make a change, because it's my opinion that if we have a true professional board running the education system, the CEO of that system should be accountable to the board. When we had the elected superintendent or the governor's superintendent, neither one of them are accountable to anybody in the education system. Okay, so if we have this Board of Education and then they do a national search and hire the best person they can to run the system, and that person is accountable to the Board of Directors, I think the system will operate a whole lot better, and I think our results will be better. It works in all the major industries we have in this country, and there's no reason it can't work in education as well.
Bringing a private sector concept into Oregon's path.
Yeah, and you know, the private sector has worked pretty well in this country, but it just gets down to how we get accountability into the system, and you know, it's not taking the governor clear outside of the loop, because he would actually appoint the board, but he would appoint the board from people. For example, in my concept, a 12-member board, there would be 3 members representing institutions of higher education. And the governor would appoint those 3 people, but he would appoint them from a pool that the universities collectively put forward and said, these are the people we want representing higher ed. Same for community colleges and same for K-12. The difference is there would be 6 people in representing K-12, because it's the 800-pound gorilla, obviously, and so they wouldn't have a plurality or a majority. They'd have plurality but no majority, but there would be 1 member from each of the 5 congressional districts and then 1 at large. But you know, the components of the K-12 system would also make those nominations to the governor that he could choose from. So it's actually making the system accountable for itself and giving them the tools necessary to try to improve education.
Jeff, thank you for coming in and enlightening us on what you'll be working on this legislative session. We appreciate you joining us here in Roseburg.
My pleasure. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. This is Oregon Senator Jeff Kruse. I'm Dana Cowley, and you're watching Charter Local Edition Northwest.